Welcome to a training video of the time cards screen in PayPak Professional 4.0. This screen is used to make multiple work log entries. Up to 5 weeks of entries can be added at a time. It's a feature dating back to the very first version of PayPak Professional when manual time cards were widely used before electronic and biometric time clocks became popular. This screen, along with the associated work log screen, is useful for anyone who does not have an electronic time clock but needs to calculate hours and minutes from times when employees started and finished work. Work log entries are intended for purposes of record keeping and reporting. The totals from work log reports can be manually entered into payroll batches. There is presently no option to import work log entries directly into payroll batches, but you can use the reports to manually create data files which can be imported using the Import Grow Space screen. The time cards screen is for adding new work log entries only. To browse, edit, or delete work log entries, you must use the work log screen. So let's log in and show you how it works. The time cards screen is accessed through the transaction section of the menu. On the ribbon menu, it's right at the end beside work log. On the drop down menu, it will be at the bottom under the work log button. Entries saved in the time cards screen are editable in the work log. It creates work log entries which you see in the work log screen. So let's click on the time cards button, and here is the screen. Let's start with a look at the layout of this screen, then I will show you how it works. First, you have the start and date, which will typically be the start of your work week for which you're making work log entries. There is an option to show all date columns, which can be turned on or off. There is the number of weeks you wish to enter, and that ranges from 1 to 5. So most people may enter a week of information at a time. If you have fortnightly paid employees, you may choose to enter 2 weeks of information at a time. You may even have cases where employees are monthly paid, and you can put it up to 5 weeks and enter the information for a full month using the 5-week option. Under that, you have the employee section where you would enter the name in part or in full of the employee, or the employee ID to select the person you wish to make the entries for. The name will appear here, the ID appears here. To the right, you have totals in hours of minutes for the entries which will appear in this grid, which is the main data entry part of this screen. At the bottom of the screen, there are a few buttons which control the functions of this screen. So let's get started. First, we enter the starting date, and I'm going to make entries for this current week, which would have began, let's say, on Monday, the start of our week. So we're going for Monday, the 31st of May. And when I do that, you'll notice that the dates of that week are listed in the grid. The option to show all date columns, if I turn it off, these columns change. If I turn it on, they change again. The date columns are where it says day and date, day and date, day and date. So if I turn it off, see, it starts from here. This first set of date columns, this is never hidden. This represents the day that you're making the entries for, and This is when you started, this is when you finished, and this is the hours and minutes that elapsed between the date and time started and date and time finished. Because many companies will have employees punch out for lunch and then punch back in, the screen is divided into two sections. So you can have, if you want to, the morning section here when they punch in, and then when they punch in, when they punch out for lunch, then the afternoon section here where they punch back in from lunch, and then when they finish at the end of the day here. So you then have the hours and minutes for the morning session, the hours and minutes for the evening session, and the total for the day. It is possible, however, to also use either side for morning or afternoon. It doesn't really matter. If you have a person who punched in the evening and they didn't work in the morning, you could enter them on this side. If your employees do not punch out for lunch, or if it's not recorded, you just have the time they start and the time that they finish, and they don't punch in or out for lunch because you allow them 1 hour's lunch and you don't track it, then you only need to enter the time they started in the morning and the time that they finished in the afternoon. So I'm going to turn this off. When the show all date columns is turned off, it allows quicker data entry because you have less columns to navigate through. There are times, however, when you will want to see those dates. For now, we will turn them off. I will be showing you how the purpose of those during the course of the demo. Back at the top, we now want an employee, and I have some dates and times here on a list for 2 employees, and we will use those for this demo. So the employee is Erica Hill. Let's put part of her name in. There it goes, it's found her. And she started on the 31st, Monday the 31st at 8:15 a.m. So I would come here to the started on the 31st, and I could type in the time, 8:15 a.m. like that. I could also take it back out. I could also click on this drop down button here, and this gives me the time entry dialog box, and it has 3 sections and it's very easy to use. You just scroll. I can scroll down to the 8. The 15 is, I can scroll up or down. It wraps around, so if I scroll I would eventually get back to the number 15. So let's go down. I want 8:15. It's the AM. I click OK, and there's my 8:15 AM. She finished at 12:08 p.m. So 12:08 p.m. and that's a total of 3 hours and 53 minutes for the morning part of her work day. That total is shown over here on that line because there's no afternoon section yet, and it's reflected here at the top of the screen. Let's say she came back into lunch. She came back at 1:09 p.m. So we started, she punched back in at 1:09 p.m. and she finished work at 5:27 p.m. 5:27 p.m. And that's a total of 4 hours and 18 minutes. Now, the totals for the day is now 8 hours and 11 minutes, which is the sum of the morning portion, the 3 hours and 53 minutes, plus the 4 hours and 18 minutes. And again, the totals at the top are updated. Okay, let's move on to the next day, the 1st of June. On the 1st of June, she's recorded as coming in as at 7:45 a.m. and she left at 2:07 p.m. and it says here that she did not come back to work that day because she left for a funeral. So she didn't take lunch, worked a little later till 2:07 p.m. and she left for a funeral. So what I could do here in the reference is put a note to reflect the reason why she did not work in the afternoon portion. So that's 6 hours and 22 minutes for the Tuesday. Bring her total for the week so far to 14 hours and 33 minutes. Okay, the next day, the 2nd of June, started at 8:15 a.m. She stopped at 1:30 for lunch, 1:30 p.m. and she came back from lunch early. She would normally have come back at 2:30, but let's say she came back at 2:05 p.m. and she finished work at 5 o'clock sharp. So 5 p.m. sharp. And that's the total for that day of 8 hours and 10 minutes. And again, the totals are updated. Now, let's look at another option. Let's say on the 3rd, there was stock taking to be done, and that stock taking went past midnight. Here's how you would enter it. She started at 3 p.m. So we've got 3 p.m. and she finished we want to put that she finished at 1:15 a.m. Now if I put 1:15 a.m. in here, 1:15 a.m., which is past midnight, I get negative totals. The reason being that this 1:15 is for the Tuesday, so it's earlier than the 3 p.m. Now this is where the show all date columns is useful. If I turn that on, I can now come to this section here and change the date to the 4th. And we now have her total for that period from 3 p.m. to 1:15 a.m., 10 hours and 15 minutes, and I can put the stock taking note in here. Right, stock taking. So correct that spelling there. Right, so stock taking. So that's how you would make an entry which crosses midnight, which passes midnight and goes into another day. All right, let's look at the other entries. On the 4th of June, she started at 8, and I can close this back, by the way. I can turn off, having changed this, having turned this on and made my change of the day. I could turn this off and it goes back displaying just the start and finish. It may appear that it's 11:15 a.m. on the Thursday, but we had changed it to the Friday's date, the 4th. So you can switch between these two modes as you wish. On the 4th, start at 8:45, 8:45 a.m. Took lunch at 2:07 p.m. 2:07 p.m. She came back from lunch at 3:07 p.m. it says here. So we have 3:07 and the p.m. And she finished work at 6:37 p.m. So 6:37 p.m. Great. One last entry on the 5th, which is the Saturday. It says she came in at 4:15 p.m. and I could enter that here. I could enter it here. I'll enter it here in this case. 6:37 p.m. Sorry, that's wrong. It was 4:15. I was reading the wrong time there. It was 4:15 p.m. to 9:27 p.m. So 9:27 and p.m. And that's it for her for this week. And this entry here, it says it's stock taken. So I will enter that again. Right, stock taken. Cool. And that's her total for the week. That's the total of her entries. Once you've reviewed it and made sure that everything is correctly done and you've got your references in where necessary, you can save the entry. And I click on save and they are now saved. Those entries could be seen in the work log and we will go there shortly, but I do have another set of entries to make for another employee. Let's go to, again, the 31st. Now my weeks is coming up at 2. Now I don't want this to be on by default, and I want my weeks to be 1. So I can click the settings button, which will save those settings for me. So when I start another entry, this is what I get by default. To clear the settings, you would click the reset button. Now these entries are for Millicent Son, M-I-L-L. Right, there she is. And she just has 3 entries. 31st of May, she started at 10:30. 10:30 a.m. and she finished at 4:20 p.m. No lunch. Actually, she did take lunch. She worked in the afternoon. She came back and she started at 8:14 p.m. and she finished on the 1st of June at 1:18 a.m. So again, this is another stock taking entry. I'll just put stock taking and I will turn on my date columns so that I can change the day she finished to the 1st of June here, and she finished at 1:18 a.m. it says. So 1:18 a.m. Right, that's a total of 5 hours and 5 minutes for the evening part, and well, for the night part, and the evening part is 5 hours and 50 minutes. Well, the morning part, sorry, it's from 10:30 to the daytime part. There's a daytime part and a nighttime part. So we have stock taken there. That's a total for her for that day of 10 hours and 55 minutes. one last entry for her on the 2nd of June. She started at 1:15 p.m. 1:15 p.m. and finished at 10:18 p.m. 10:18 and p.m. Let me say OK there. So that's her time. She worked 9 hours and 3 minutes for that day. That's her total. And we save that. And that's the end of the data entry portion of this demo. Now, the buttons here at the bottom, the save, of course, is to save the entries. The new is to clear the screen. The settings button saves this option and the option for the weeks, as we showed you. The reset will clear the settings, and the video button will launch your browser and let you view this video on YouTube, so that if you need to go through it again to see how anything works, you can do so while you're working in the software. Now let's take a look. Let's move the screen aside a bit and have a look at the work log so that we can see those entries. If I go to the work log screen and I place it over here and we click last, there is the entry which we made for Millicent Son. There's the entry number, there's the date for it, there is the type, it says manual. All entries created in PayPak, all work log entries, whether they're entered through the work log or through the time cards, the type for them says manual. Any other option you see on the type will be for cases where there's a customized program which can import entries, which can export entries to PayPak, and they're imported into PayPak, and this type would indicate the source or the origin of those entries. But for things in PayPak, it's whether it's entered through the work log or the time cards, type will say manual. That's the employee name and ID, the date and time started, date and time finished, the hours and minutes, reference where applicable. I could also come here and make changes to these. So if she really finished at 10:38 instead of 10:18 p.m., I make the change and I can update it here and save the entry. So that would have changed to whatever. I can look back through the other entries as well. I can also browse them. And there you go. These are the 3 entries for Millicent Son. These are the other entries for Erica Hill. And there would have been entries made through the work log through other screens before, previous entries in the database. Now, these entries can be printed. There are 2 reports which allow you to see these entries. Let's go to the reports part of the screen, standard reports, and I'm going to click on the W. There we go. And there is the work log detail, which if we preview that, this is what it looks like. It lists all the entries out, and it has a total at the bottom, the number of employees, the number of entries, total hours and minutes. Each entry you see the entry ID, the entry date, type of entry, employee ID, employee name, date and time started, date and time finished, number of hours and minutes, and the reference. So this report could be used with a filter to select the records for a particular employee or for a particular date or date range. I did not choose any, I chose all in this particular case. You can also print the work log detail by employee, and that looks like this. This groups the entries by employee, and if you look at Erica Hill here, the entries are sorted by the time started. Okay, unlike the other report where by default it sorts by the entry number. So you could use this report to manually key the totals for the week into a batch for gross pay when you're editing the batches, and these are her totals here. Or you could create a manual batch import file, gross pay file, and import it using the import gross pay feature. So that's how this works. Those are your two reports, and that would bring this demo to a close. So I'm going to just close this screen here. As I mentioned before, there's a video for the time card screen, which is the same video which you're viewing now. And then we have the exit button, which brings this video to a close. It's been a pleasure to present these videos to you as always, and please do look out for the next one. Take care and goodbye.